The rain falls gently, softly, quietly. The smooth, shining surface of the lake becomes dappled with ripples. Feel your tension slowly melt away. Let's begin with this. You wake up in the wrong century. You open your eyes in a forest as silent as a graveyard. Not the kind of peaceful silence you hope for after a long day, but the kind of silence that makes your brain whisper, "Why is nothing making a sound?" No car horns, no fan humming, not even the neighbors fighting over the washing machine. Just the crunch of dry leaves and birds chirping like they're telling ghost stories in a haunted tone. The air is damp, cold, and smells of rotting earth. You realize you're lying on the ground, your back aching like a horse just kicked your spine, and your heart pounding like a village drum alerting a fire. You don't know where you are, but you know one thing for certain. This is not your average Monday morning. You try to jump up, or at least you try, because the ground is soggy and your body feels like wood. The darkness is so thick, it's as if someone ladled it from last week's stew, dense and lightless. You pull out your phone, a reflex as natural as breathing. 3% battery. No signal. No Wi-Fi. No hope. All you've got is a cold, useless lock screen, like a one-way ticket to nowhere. You try to breathe. The smell in the air is so foreign that your nose seems confused. Burnt wood, wet leaves, a hint of animal dung, and something that smells like unwashed musk, the scent of a world that's never heard the word sanitizer. You look down at yourself, jeans, a hoodie, sneakers. Your entire being is screaming, "I'm from the wrong century." You look like a messenger from the planet polyester. For a split second, you imagine walking into a village only to be chased out as a suspected witch, or worse, a talking mushroom. No. You need to act. Right now. You frantically strip off your modern clothes and bury them under a bush like evidence of a crime. You smear mud on your face, unsure if you're camouflaging or punishing yourself. Then, you start crawling toward the flickering light in the distance. The path you take, or rather, the path that chooses you, is a slick mud track, like a skating rink opened during a rainstorm. Each step is a visual comedy, feet sliding, butt crashing, and your soul disconnecting in protest. Finally, you see the village. Not the romantic movie kind with cozy bakeries and warm yellow lanterns, but the kind where every house looks ready to collapse from exhaustion. Thatch roofs dangle like wigs after a windstorm, and the air reeks of wood smoke, cow dung, and the stale scent of cold despair. Chickens cross the road like you're trespassing on their turf. One stares at you like it's lived longer than you have and already knows what's about to happen. You hunch forward, shuffle closer to a group huddled around a fire, and try to speak a sentence that sounds both pitiful and old-timey. I am a pilgrim to Canterbury. It doesn't wash your face, but at least it sounds familiar enough to avoid being stoned on the spot. A large elderly woman looks you up and down, lips curling like she just sniffed a lie, then tosses you a chunk of bread. Not the fluffy kind you'd eat for breakfast. This one could block a door, be used in a fight, or carved into a weapon. But you chew anyway. Your teeth rebel. Your tongue panics. But you eat because you know. To survive here, you need to adapt faster than a prayer in a plague. You glance around, trying not to lock eyes with anyone for too long. But their stares reach you first, cutting through smoke and mud. No one speaks, but their eyes shout, "Stranger!" And worse, "Trouble!" You stand there, back hunched, trying to appear hopeful, but every gesture screams you've never mended a shirt with a broken needle, never blown on a fire through a wooden pipe, and certainly never stepped into a place where smiles are luxuries no one dares to waste. You tell yourself to be quiet, to breathe slowly, to become a story no one has time to question. Canterbury. You repeat it in your mind. A pilgrim, alone, with a reason, but no need to explain. You've just begun learning the first lesson of this century, where identity is secondary. The story you tell is what decides whether you make it through the night. And night is coming fast. You open your eyes in a damp stable, where the straw isn't there to cushion your back, but to audition for the role of a vengeful acupuncture set. The sun isn't up yet, but that signature gray of the misty land has already covered everything in a sad hue, as if trying to hide the truth that today won't be much better than yesterday. A rooster crows from somewhere, long and groaning, as if it too isn't thrilled about waking up early. You blink, reach for the bag beside you. Empty. No socks. No last piece of candy. No hope. Someone, an invisible soul from the 14th century, must have decided you were too wealthy to be left alone. Here, theft isn't a sin. It's a profession. As common as muddy roads, backaches, or the curses people hurl after tripping over rocks someone forgot to move. You crawl up. Your back hurts. Your stomach grumbles. Your mood's in tatters. And then you meet her, the woman sweeping outside the inn. Her broom is larger than society's moral compass. Her eyes are sharp as a sickle, and her mouth unfiltered. When you ask about the missing items, she curls her lip as if you just tried to reclaim honor in a town that's never sold any. "Welcome to the town," she says. Idiot. No police, no complaint forms, no hotline. Just you, and a rusty knife gifted by a monk who looked kind, but seems to have long lost faith in the system. The knife is so dull it can't cut bread, but at least it can leave an impression. You tie your bag to your shirt, turn a frayed rope into a belt, and begin to move like part of the scenery. Low, silent, invisible. You walk like your shoes are the next to go, eyes on the ground. The ground rarely judges you. The market is your destination, or rather, the only place you can go without being questioned. It opens like a chaotic beehive. People, shouts, the smell of spoiled meat, wilted vegetables, and smoldering coal. A place where every sense is ambushed at once. The pickpockets here aren't criminals. They're social architects, buzzing like flies around dung pits, living by skill and body odor. They don't sniff out wealth. They sniff out weakness. You remind yourself, to survive, be invisible. You dodge stares, avoid cellars, step light like a cat no one loves. You try asking the price of an onion. The vendor looks at you like you just asked to marry his daughter. You back away, telling yourself you're not hungry enough to mortgage the future for a slice of root. And then you meet the old man. He sits at the edge of the market, one hand on his stomach, the other offering half a turnip, already sliced. "Old turnip, but still firm," he says, then tells you how he was robbed last night. The thieves didn't take anything, except his faith. You nod, chewing the turnip slowly as if it's the last item left in the universe. Hard, tasteless, but warm. Warm not because of flavor, but because it was shared. You thank him with a nod. He only smiles, asks you nothing. Here, names matter less than the ability to listen. You grip your knife tighter, not because you think you'll use it, but because your hand needs something to hold on to, something with shape, with weight, a reminder that you're still here. Around you, the world keeps turning, slow, uneven. Wooden wheels grind over muddy roads. Chickens bicker in straw. Children scream for reasons no one cares to know. And you, a wanderer lost in time, start to understand. Survival here isn't about fighting well or running fast. It's knowing when to bow your head, when to step back, and when to clutch half a turnip like a sacred relic. You have no place to sleep tonight, no idea what dinner might be, but at least you've learned your first lesson. To survive, learn to become a shadow. Not brilliant, not bold, but not so easily erased from the map either. You quietly leave the market, heading toward the dirt path leading to the edge of town. The wind picks up, gently, but enough to remind you that night is coming. And you still don't know what will find you first, a roof or a stranger holding a knife sharper than yours. You pass by the forge at the end of the street, where the fire doesn't warm. It bares its teeth in warning, and each strike of the hammer crashes like a medieval rock concert for suffering metal. Every blow against iron is a reminder. This place isn't for the weak, and certainly not for anyone without a defined role in the meat pie that is 14th century social structure. The smell of burning iron, sweat, and smoke slaps you in the face as if the forge itself is growling. You haven't bathed, and I know. You try to walk faster, head down, heart pounding, but your borrowed posture, hunched at the wrong angle, shoulders clenched like you're about to punch someone, and a cloak dragging behind you like a cheap costume train, makes you stand out like an extra who forgot their line center stage. And then a voice growls behind you, like metal grinding between the teeth of the living. "What guild are you from?" You freeze. It's the blacksmith. His hands are twice the size of your face, his forehead streaked with soot, his eyes as sharp as a chisel. You turn slowly, throat dry, heart ready to leap out and scout the terrain ahead. I'm a pilgrim," you stammer, voice shaking like a leaf that just found out winter is coming early. The blacksmith looks at you, as if deciding whether you're a fool, a thief, or just someone too close to starving to be a bother anymore. After a few seconds of silence, the kind that feels like it's warming up to a public execution, he exhales through his nose, turns back to the glowing metal, and says nothing. You exhale too, but carefully, in case you accidentally inhale your previous life. Here, Everyone has a place, a structure, an order, a name written in some ledger you'll never get to see. Lords are on horseback, above even the law. Tradesmen are under roofs, with hammers and guilds. Farmers live in mud, faces down, but at least their names are known at the market. And you? You're a smudge still drying, a shadow not yet shaped, a perfect round zero, invisible when necessary, but utterly lost when someone starts counting. You start learning fast, very fast, how to bow your head like there's something shameful hanging from your neck, how to speak so little you start to wonder if you're going mute, how to avoid eye contact unless you want to get punched or proposed to. You move like a spirit not yet baptized, floating through crowds that are always busy and always ready to expel anything unfamiliar. A bread seller under a rough awning tosses you a piece of barley bread, the kind that, if it hits your head, would leave a bump rather than fill your belly. She doesn't smile. She doesn't look at you, not out of pity, but because she believes helping a pilgrim is the fastest way to earn points with God, just in case she needs to offset a few youthful sins. You catch the bread, nod in gratitude, and chew, even though your teeth loudly protest. Dry, hard, bitter, not the bitterness of grains, but the bitterness of reality. You are nobody unless you invent a story convincing enough. Here, identity isn't in IDs or public records. It's in the story you choose to tell. And as you quickly realize, it's not a right. It's a duty. You can't just be someone. You must be someone, with a destination, a reason, a backstory, and if possible, a little tragedy to help it go down smoother. Pilgrim is a safe choice, but only if you tell it right. If you forget the name of where you're headed, or say you're from east of Manchester, which won't exist for another 500 years, you're toast. One slip, and you'll get beaten by stale bread and cursed out by a midwife with authority. You begin to rehearse, in your head, on your lips, when no one's listening. I'm a pilgrim. I'm from a small village in the north. I'm heading to Canterbury to atone for my family's sins. My cousin is sick. I travel alone because my parents died in the plague. You add details each day. Each retelling smooths out the rough edges. Each version erases a crack in the imaginary painting you now live inside. No one asked you much today, but sooner or later, someone will. Sooner or later, you'll face someone who knows better, speaks differently, sees deeper, and you're not sure if you'll survive that. You tighten your sash, adjust your shoulders, bite into another chunk of barley bread hard enough to build a wall with, and keep moving. The street ahead leads to the side market. You need work. You need shelter. You need to survive one more day without being exposed. And you don't yet know. The first trap is waiting, just around the next corner. You cling to your pilgrim disguise the way a cat clings to a windowsill in a storm. I'm going to Canterbury, you repeat, your voice just reverent enough, just hoarse enough to carry the weight of holy exhaustion. You have no idea what St. Thomas Becket looked like, but you still whisper a plea in your mind, asking him to help you survive the scrutiny of this century. A gaze capable of peeling lies faster than any modern truth detection machine. The stable boy you test your story on first just nods, expressionless, as if you'd told him, "Might rain tomorrow." To him, a pilgrim is no different than a lost horse. As long as you don't trample the hay or spread disease, you earn the right to exist. You understand now. Pilgrim is a golden card. It neatly packages everything you need: faith, wandering, the right to be questioned less, and the sacred permission to remain silent. A pilgrim can be hungry, dirty, directionless, sleepless, illogical, and still be forgiven, because they're walking toward the place of forgiveness. You begin weaving the tale. A distant village with no name, the vaguer, the better. A sick cousin, maybe with a strange illness. The harder to verify, the better. You travel alone because your family is busy in the fields, or dead from the plague, or because no one back home believes in God anymore. Depends on the day. You rehearse how to tell it, pausing in the right places, eyes gazing into some tragic distance, hands clenched like someone who just had a shouting match with fate. You practice fake Latin mutterings, syllables slurred like drunken karaoke, just wholly sounding enough, but not clear enough for anyone educated to realize you're butchering it completely. An old monk, tired of life and of muddled pilgrims like you, gives you a place to sleep in a corner of the monastery. Not a bed, just a cracked stone patch between two bodies snoring like broken farming machines. You lie down like you've known this hardness all your life. The smell, sweat, moldy straw, and damp decay hits your nose like some twisted initiation rite. Dinner is a chunk of stale bread, which might have fought off rats and won by being too hard. The soup is as thin as the excuses you gave to miss work back home, except saltier. Salty like the tears of those who once had high hopes for the pilgrim life. You eat slowly, as if each bite will unlock some divine secret. It unlocks nothing, except a newfound respect for clean water. You close your eyes, trying not to think about bed bugs. But the itch creeps up faster than the fear of being found out. You curl up, facing the cold stone wall, and whisper your story to yourself like a lullaby. Canterbury. Atonement. No mistakes. No hesitation. No stumbles. The story is armor, but thin as rice paper in morning dew. You realize a lie doesn't need to be grand. It just needs to be consistent. Every sentence you say is a brick. Say the wrong one, and the whole wall collapses. And you, a no name, no network, no status ghost, will be buried right under it. You hear a shift beside you. Another pilgrim sighs. A faint prayer mumbled from the far corner. The wind slips through a crack in the wall, hissing like soft accusation. You curl up tighter, arms wrapping your stomach as if cradling the story you've made up, hoping it's warm enough to get you through the night. Tomorrow, you'll have to tell it again. To another monk, to a cheese vendor, to a hired hand outside the city gate. Each time, you'll need to hold the rhythm, the structure, the emotion. Like a trained actor who only has one script, and an audience with the right to call the guards if they smell performance. Canterbury. Sick cousin. Atonement. Alone. You repeat it like a mantra, not to convince them, to convince yourself that you deserve one more day. A woman, maybe a farmer's wife, a local aunt, or someone with a semi-official role in the village's food chain of power, points straight at you with a hand still gripping a hoe, then tosses you a one-word command. Firewood and herbs from the forest. No explanation, no name asked, just pure directive, like you're a piece of software pre-installed to understand commands by eye contact alone. You nod like a rebooted robot caught in a hailstorm, even though in your head, time sounds like the name of an indie band you once listened to, and wild herbs just means anything growing out of the ground. But choice doesn't exist here. In this world, saying no doesn't lose you a karma point. It might lose you a fingernail, a tooth, or your one chance to stay alive another day. You trudge toward the woods before the sun has had a chance to climb above the monastery roof, hugging a burlap sack larger than your confidence, stepping into a trail still slick with dawn dew. You remember someone once said, "The forest belongs to God." Here, God has a surname, and that surname is Lord. Every fallen twig, every wild berry, every breath of cool air has a price tag. Pick the wrong thing, and you'll be punished like you just stole a crown. You learn fast. Pick up only what's already dropped. Gather leaves that grow low. Stay away from anything juicy, pretty, or suspiciously like something illustrated in poison books. Mugwort, plantain, nettle, wortweed, names you half remember from the turnip breath lecture of that same woman. You whisper them like a school kid cramming for a test he'll never be prepared for. Your hands bleed after the first brush with brambles. The thorns here don't joke. They're like minor officials, small, sharp, and always difficult. Nettles sting like low flame licking dry skin, leaving behind welted lines like ancient runes on your arms. You don't cry. You don't groan. Pain is normal. Complaints are suspicious. You crouch low, trying to make yourself as small as possible. In the woods, maybe no one sees you work, but something is always watching. Maybe a thief, or something worse. A branch snaps behind you. You freeze. A squirrel, or a deer. You hope? But in this world, you've learned not to check. Just bow your head, move quickly, and hope the day ends early. By noon, you find a rock dry enough to sit on without squishing something that hisses. Lunch is barley bread so hard, you suspect it once moonlighted as brick in a fireplace. You chew slowly, like gnawing an old memory, eyes watching a stream bubble past gnarled roots. The water tastes of soil, cold and slightly slimy, but cleaner than any promise you've ever heard. You drink. You don't say thanks, because you don't know who to thank. You just swallow quietly, as if making peace with the root of everything. By afternoon, your shoulders burn, neck stiff, fingers numb. Each step becomes a silent prayer. Don't slip. Don't get lost. Don't meet anyone. And then dusk falls, quick and final, like a door slammed without goodbye. You return to the village, firewood on your back, herbs dangling like invisible trophies, and the soul of someone who's just survived a job interview with fate. The woman takes the goods without a word, then drops into your hand a turnip, uncooked, unsalted, unexplained. A turnip, white, cold, and looking at you as if it too is offended to be used as currency. You want to scream. A turnip? After hours of brambles, sniffing weeds, dodging death in the woods? But you don't say it. You bow your head, grip the turnip like shaking hands with a smug winner. Here, gratitude is safer than rebellion. A complaint might earn you, what? A bruise, or never getting hired again. That night, you return to the stable. The same spot, same stink, same straw, and lie down between two old cows. You cradle the turnip like an old friend from another life. Not because you love it, but because, in this world, holding on to anything overnight is a miracle. Outside, the wind rises. You close your eyes, not because you're sleepy, but because there's nothing left worth keeping them open for. And you don't yet know that tomorrow the small job waiting for you at the village gate comes with a smile you should never trust. You once thought you were well prepared. You read the books. You practiced the language. You even listened to podcasts about Old English from the Beowulf era. You whispered, "Whet," in front of the mirror like it was the key to unlock every door in the 14th century. But then you stepped into the market and realized what you learned wasn't medieval English. It was dream English, the kind that's been scrubbed clean, polished, and carefully footnoted. Reality? Very different. People speak like they're in a rap battle at 2x speed. Nasal, swallowed syllables, words stuck together like burned rice at the bottom of a pot. And it's not even the kind you saw in books. This was a mix of French, Latin, local dialects, and sharp, wheezing breaths. A soup of sounds so tangled that even Chaucer might have said, "Just give me subtitles." You try to eavesdrop on two men arguing near the dried fish cart. You think they're talking about fish. Then one of them mentions witch's breath, and the other waves his arms like he's exercising something. Could be about food. Could be about magic. Or both. You stand like a statue, eyes wide, lips sealed, trying not to breathe too loud so you won't get roped into it. Then another man, older, round, with the look of a ticket inspector sniffing for fakes, turns to you and grunts, "Flemish?" Not hello, not need help, just Flemish? Like you're an overcooked piece of meat and he's trying to guess your country of origin. You stammer, then remember your survival lesson. When in doubt, don't speak. You raise a hand to your throat, fake a sore neck, shrug like a sad little mime. He looks at you, considering whether you're worth a follow-up, then turns away as if you weren't worth the effort. That's your win. Not because you won the argument, but because you dodged a conversation. In this century, every question is a trap. Every exchange, a maze. And you don't have a map. Latin? Worse. You thought Latin was a golden ticket, something that marked you as educated. Turns out, it's a one-way pass into the pit of follow-up questions. An old monk gave you a long, suspicious look after you muttered "Pax vobiscum" during a morning ceremony. "Where did you study?" he asked. Seems innocent, but your heart dropped to belt level. You almost said, "online." Instead, you coughed, bowed, and pretended to be illiterate, like it was a moral choice. From then on, you started learning a new language. Not Anglo-Saxon, not Latin, but the language of survival. Short, vague, Safe. Yes. No. Maybe. I don't know. I'm tired. God will guide me. Those 6 lines looped in your head like a survival playlist. Each time you spoke, you used fewer and fewer words. Any less, and you'd just nod. You avoided jokes like the plague, not just because you didn't understand them, but because if you laughed at the wrong time, too soon, too late, too loud, you'd be stared at like a madman. Here, humor isn't connection. It's cultural encryption. Every time you begin to understand a joke, you worry it might actually be a curse. Gradually, you survive through eye contact. Nods, bows, shrugs, pointing. Every question answered with a look. Every request dodged with eyes to the ground. You become a master at looking busy. A quick step when someone calls. A fake stoop to pick up something that isn't there. A wave to someone behind you, even though there's nothing back there but grass and a confused chicken. You feel like beta software inside an ancient operating system. Each sentence is a block of code, and you don't have the update. So you choose selective silence, living like a shadow in the background of the market. Sometimes, you catch someone's gaze lingering too long. They say nothing, but you feel the question hanging between you. Who are you? And you know, someday, that gaze won't pass you by. It will stop. And when it does, the story you've memorized, word for word, might no longer be enough. But that's a problem for another day. For now, you bow your head, turn away, and whisper to yourself, like every day, yes, no, I'm on pilgrimage. Your stomach started a rebellion just a few hours after that infamous bowl of pottage, something between a vegetable soup and a curse cast by a chef who swore loyalty to no one but salt. In the bowl, beans, of course, some chunks of unidentifiable roots and vegetables, a scrap of potato or turnip, maybe, and something that looked suspiciously like the root of the problem itself. The whole dish was thick, grayish-brown, like a floor after a muddy storm, and smelled like an argument between onions and wet shoes. You ate all of it, because here, refusing food is a sin. And then your body, like any self-respecting citizen, reacted. First came the dull ache, then the cramps, then despair. You ran, or rather, stumbled like hay blown by wind behind the pigsty. It stank, but at least it was quiet. And you collapsed like a returned parcel on the cold ground. You curled up, clutching your stomach, cold sweat pouring like September hail. You groaned among the smells of mud, pigs, and the creeping sense that if this was where you die, may no one ever raise a statue in your name. Spring water, old bread, the very things that once kept you alive now stood accused in the murder of your intestines. You didn't know if it was bacteria, bad luck, or the looming specter of starvation. All you knew was that your digestive system had submitted a letter of resignation. In this century, sickness isn't blamed on viruses. It's bad air. It's God's will. It's because you stood near someone with sin in their soul, or maybe you just didn't burn enough incense on the full moon. Science hadn't been invited to the party. And germs? That sounds like the name of a goblin in a folk tale. You lay there, panting like a punctured water skin, just hoping that if you were going to die, please, at least after lunch. Then someone arrived. Not an angel, not a doctor, a nun. Small frame, eyes sharp like the knife used to cut communion bread, and a hand holding something. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just opened your mouth, shoved in something bitter enough to make you think you just kissed the devil's boots. You swallowed out of instinct, then coughed like you were trying to return it. She didn't smile, didn't soothe, just handed you some broth, so thin you could see the bottom of the bowl even with your eyes closed. Then she led you, silently, to a shaded corner near the monastery, where there was straw, some old shade, and a smell you couldn't name. You collapsed again, breathing like someone who'd climbed a mountain only to discover they were still in the backyard. 3 days, 3 nights, no real consciousness, just fever dreams, strange voices, and the sensation that your bones were talking to each other in the ancient language of pain. You were as weak as overboiled noodles, eyes closed, mouth dry, breath like someone had blended livestock and charcoal. And yet, somehow, you didn't die. Not because of a miracle, but because years of surviving on cold food and stale coffee had finally paid off. You survived. A miracle. No medals, no applause. But in the Middle Ages, simply not dying was enough to earn a line in the diary. If you had paper, ink, and the energy to move a finger. When you were finally strong enough to sit up, the nun returned. She tossed another bundle of bitter roots into your lap, said nothing. You nodded in gratitude, as if she had handed you a personal blessing from heaven. Then you swept the courtyard. No one asked, no one praised, but you swept, maybe as thanks. Maybe just to feel like less of a parasite living off soup and straw. One cool morning, you stepped away from your patch of straw into the sunlight. Your back still ached, your gut still fragile, but your mind was clear. Next time, look closely at what's in the stew, and pray the next dish has no roots, no bottom, and no aftermath. You walked toward the monastery gate, still clutching that bundle of roots like an unwanted gift, and whispered to yourself, this was a lesson. But before you could extract any profound meaning from it all, a voice called out behind you. Unfamiliar, unfriendly. Your bag is gone again, not vanished in some mystical way, just in the very practical sense. Someone took it, while you slept, while you breathed, while you briefly believed that maybe things had finally settled. And just like that, gone. The few coins you'd saved, the little compass you kept, not for direction, but for the sentimental belief that maybe, just maybe, it had some kind of magical authority. The piece of cloth you once used as a scarf and later as a rag, now only a memory. You told the story to the baker the next morning, not to ask for help, just to remind yourself that you still existed. He laughed, a dry, brittle laugh, like sun-dried turnip peel. What did you expect? Gold? He asked, as if your hope that your meager possessions would remain yours was the finest joke he'd heard all week. You laughed too, not because it was funny, but because here, if you don't laugh, your only other option is crying. No police, no lost and found, no official forms. Here, the law of the forest is the law of the land. If you don't hold your things tight enough, they're no longer yours. Everyone knows. Everyone's been a victim or a thief at least once. Petty theft isn't an incident, it's infrastructure. So you learn. You tie your replacement bag inside your shirt. Every time you sleep, you curl around it like a cat in a thunderstorm, arms clutching it like a child holds a ragged doll. You walk the streets like you owe everyone money. Eyes down, back slightly hunched, hands always close to your waist. No one teaches you. You learn it after enough dreams are ripped away by cold, waking hands. The market is the most dangerous place. Each morning, you walk in like an actor stepping onto stage in a play titled "The One Who Does Not Want to Die Today." All around you, all types, mushroom sellers, possibly poisonous, butchers shouting over possibly spoiled meat, and pickpockets moving through the crowd like background actors in a comedy no one asked to see. They don't wear black. They don't cover their faces. Some smile. Some pretend to sell bread. Some look like you. And perhaps, if you fail enough times, you will become one of them. Not because you want to, but because you have to. Punishment exists. Oh, definitely. There are boards, there are tools, whips, amputations, gallows. But you've never seen anyone get caught. Only people who've lost something, and people pretending not to notice. You learn quickly. Here, everyone's either a victim or a culprit. There's no middle ground. The neutral starve. The neutral get robbed. You learn to move through crowds like a shadow, unmemorable, unmentioned. You avoid eye contact. You avoid clusters. If someone smiles at you, you smile back. But your feet are already preparing to leave. One afternoon, you sit on the roadside, pretending to fix your sandal strap. Not because it's broken, but because you need an excuse to observe. An old man comes and sits beside you. He doesn't ask, doesn't look at you, just pulls out a small turnip, the kind you once considered the cheapest reward in history, and breaks it in half. He hands you one. "Got robbed last week," he says, his voice steady, as if he's talking about the weather. "In the street, in daylight. They left me nothing but my hat and a bruised rib." You nod, chewing the turnip like it's the last prize on earth. It tastes of dirt, a hint of spice, a little bitterness. But it's real, not a dream. And when the old man stands and walks away, you tighten your grip on the rusted knife you've been hiding at your side, not to use, just to remember that you are not completely powerless. You've learned to live like a shadow. Now, you're beginning to learn to live like a thorn. All you wanted was warmth, just once, to sit by a fire without needing to bow, without being shoved aside for not having the proper standing. So when you saw that empty seat by the hearth in the tavern, you sat down like a stray cat curling into the first patch of sunlight it could find. Mistake. 3 men turned to look at you as if you had just sat on their crown. One of them, broad-shouldered, bearded, with eyes sharp enough to slice bread without a knife, growled, "Who do you think you are?" You stood up faster than a man who finds ants in his bed, not because you had an answer, but because you knew. Here, not everyone has the right to place their behind just anywhere. A seat isn't just a place to sit, it's a badge of status. You stood there in the smoke-stained room as every eye turned toward you like cold water poured in the dead of night, and you realized everything here is coded in class, from the fabric on one's back to the seat by the wall. Nobles wear silk, soft, shiny, a glittering declaration that they've never touched mud. Merchants wear wool, clean, warm, creased, a message that they have money but choose subtlety. Farmers wear rough cloth, earth-colored, scratchy, like the lives they live. And you? You're a question with no answer. A pilgrim? A wanderer? No family? No position? Which means bottom of the barrel. No one had to say it. The glances said enough. You bowed your head as a woman passed by, her cloak lined with golden thread, a ring so large it could double as a cooking pot lid. You didn't know who she was, but the servant behind her called her the carpet merchant's lady. You bowed deep. She offered a faint smile. Her bodyguard looked at you like he was deciding which hand to punch you with. A few minutes later, you tried again, this time with someone lower. An old man carrying soup passed by, and you remembered a tip from a medieval etiquette book. Assert authority over the low, so the high may notice you. You snapped at him like a makeshift noble. He turned, glanced, and spit into your soup. No one said anything, but someone nearby nodded, as if they'd just witnessed a lesson in humility well taught. Later, a blacksmith sat near you. He didn't smile, didn't introduce himself, just looked at you and said, "Don't touch silk, don't look at nobility. Green means lord, blue means scholar, gray means monk. You should wear shadow." You nodded, unsure what to say. But from that day on, you learned to live like a shadow. Step light, make no noise, eyes down, feet never brushing the hems of others. You sat in corners where the smoke was thickest, laughed quietly, spoke little, and stepped back in every situation. Not because you were timid, but because you'd learned invisibility is safety. But being invisible is exhausting. Every step is a calculation. Every nod, a move in a social chess match. Every meal, a scan to see who's watching, who's judging, who's about to shout because you sat too close to an embroidered tablecloth. You lived like an extra in a play where no one gave you the script, but the whole village knows you flubbed the line. At night, you lay on straw, staring up at cracked beams, and dreamed. Not of hot soup, or steady fire, or a bag untouched by thieves. You dreamed of a world where no one cared what you wore, where people didn't judge by thread or stitch, where chairs weren't ranked like battlefield command posts, where you could walk into a room and not feel like silence wrapped in borrowed fabric. A world that might not belong here. All you wanted was direction. Not to run away, not to cast spells, just to be sure you were heading east, or at the very least, not wandering in circles like a blindfolded chicken. So you pulled the compass from your bag, just for a second, just one quick glance, and then came the scream, sharp as a funeral trumpet. "Witch!" You turned. A scruffy little boy, missing teeth, clutching an onion, was pointing at you like you just turned water into blood. You shoved the compass back into your shirt, heart pounding like it was trying to escape your rib cage. Around you, people gathered. No one shouted, but the whispers were worse. "Demon. A sign. That thing spins without wind." You walked faster, not running. Running means guilt, but not too slow. Slow means you're surrounded. You moved like a breeze slipping through a crowd, eyes down, steps sure. But then came the voice you feared most. A pilgrim, with sorcery. The priest, white-haired, hollow-eyed, gripping his cross like it could measure your soul on sight. You veered away, mumbling a prayer stitched together from two random services you half remembered. He followed. Not fast, not loud, but steady, like a hound that's caught the scent. You thought fast. You couldn't drop the compass here. You couldn't hand it to him. And you couldn't explain magnetism without getting burned at the stake. So that night, you snuck into the woods, dug a hole with a wooden spoon, and buried the compass, like a childhood secret no one should ever dig up. You kept the matchbox, partly in case you ever needed fire, mostly because if you lost even that, you'd officially be a citizen of the 14th century. And you weren't ready. To avoid questions, you made something up. I learned to make fire from a Tibetan monk. No one knew where Tibet was. The story slid down like bad wine. Bitter, but passable. After that, you hid everything. Not just objects, your voice, your gestures, your instincts, even tiny habits, like checking a watch that no longer existed, or muttering lyrics to songs that had never been written. Every modern flicker was a stone tied to your ankle in a swamp of suspicion. Then one day, you saw her. A girl at the market, wearing sandals. In winter. No fur lining, no wool, just bare straps, bare feet, and eyes scanning the crowd like she was afraid to be seen. You knew. Not from the clothes, from the loneliness. That look. The one you saw in the mirror when you first got here. A face not made for this time. Pretending, blending, but still standing out like a hymn sung in the wrong key. You almost stepped forward. Part of you wanted to ask, "Are you?" Part of you just wanted someone else who existed. But you stepped back, because to stand out is suicide. Two strangers locking eyes in a medieval square might as well paint targets on their backs. You turned away, pretending not to see, just like you'd practiced for days, and you understood, more deeply than ever, to be normal is to survive. Don't shine, don't lead, don't be different. Here, the survivors are the ones who melt into the background, who bow at the right time, who choose the lowest seat, who laugh when it's safe and vanish when it's not. You started walking softer, eating slower, nodding at stories you barely understood. You learned to hug the edges, speak just enough, and never, ever take anything out of your pocket when there were children nearby. And when night fell, you didn't dream of phones or Netflix or iced coffee with milk or GPS. You dreamed of becoming someone ordinary, someone no one noticed. But can you really live forever as just a shadow? You lie on a bed of old straw, tangled like the threads of time, your coat wrapped around you, smelling like you just cuddled an entire garbage heap. The scent of sweat, smoke, rotting meat, and something that resembles ancient mystery fills the air. No pillow, no mattress, just your back and a nest of straw blades that seem to be having a competition to see who can stab you awake first. You doze off, and you dream, not of home, not of parties or music, but of running water, of foamy white soap, of clean socks, of slipping into dry clothes without having to sniff them first. These dreams make you want to cry, or at the very least, wish you could smell your own armpit without passing out. A rooster crows. Not the cheerful kind from cartoons, but the graw, graw, graw kind, echoing and brutal, like the medieval version of an air raid siren. You jolt awake. Your neck is stiff as a log. Your legs resemble a muddy modernist painting, a mixture of grime, sweat, and dried blood. You inhale. Straw. Manure. People. All of it mixed together like someone bottled authentic Middle Ages and sprayed it right in your face. You're surviving, yes, but are you really living? Or just drifting along to the sound of church bells and the sharp crackle of a hungry stomach? No days off, no privacy, not a single moment that truly belongs to you. Even when you lie alone, you're lying beneath something. The monastery, the village, the saints, the suspicion. You begin to learn the rhythm of this world. Mornings start with prayer, or pretending, if you want to avoid being questioned. Then comes the soup, watery, like diluted hope, salty like the tears of someone who just lost everything for walking past the wrong group of soldiers. You avoid the wig seller in the marketplace. He keeps asking if you want to look more noble. You don't. You just want to not be noticed. You do all sorts of work. Unloading crates, stacking straw, helping a farmer round up runaway chickens. In exchange, half a dried fish. More accurately, half a fish corpse. Head intact, eyeball included. You unwrap it and see maggots waving at you like old friends. You hand it back. No refunds, just a glare that says, "Are you the kind of person who prefers fish without maggots?" You eat broken crusts of bread scavenged from a collapsed stall. Not because it tastes good, but because there's no other choice. You sit on the church steps, cold and dry. You watch people walk by, trying to figure out how to act like you belong. You don't speak. You just nod. You nod when someone looks at you. You nod when someone curses. You nod when someone coughs. Then one afternoon, a child, maybe 5, in a dress patched like a honeycomb, runs past and drops a small turnip. A turnip. That vegetable that once passed for your salary. You pick it up. No hesitation, no question. You hand it back. She looks at you, then smiles. Not big, not bright, just a twitch of the lips, half because of you, half because of how sunlight hit her face. But it's the closest thing to humanity you've felt in days. You smile back, awkward, but real. And in that moment, you're not just surviving. You're almost human. You almost belong. That night, you curl up with an old blanket someone abandoned near the bakery oven. It smells like mold and age and someone you'll never meet. But it doesn't bother you. You clutch it like a rare bit of warmth. You're about to drift off when you hear footsteps outside, slow, dragging softly across the earth. Not rushed, but not random either. And you know, this night's sleep will not be a peaceful one. You wake up, thin as a twig, ribs sticking out like a biology model left behind in a 14th century abandoned classroom. Your hands tremble. Your legs are stiff. Your back aches like you spent the night sleeping on a wall made of thorns. But you're alive, and that's a starting point. You drag yourself out of the corner of an old stable where the smell of cow dung competes with moldy hay. Your clothes? They're not something you wear anymore. They're camouflage. Rough cloth, shoulder torn, stained in dirt and sweat. You dip your hand into soot, smear a bit on your face like an actor preparing for the role of "Please don't burn me today." Cleanliness? Around here, that's suspicious. Clean is unnatural. Clean is witchcraft. You learned that lesson after the second time someone asked why your hands weren't filthy. You walk hunched, not from pain, but because bending is the body language of survival here. Stand up straight, and you look like a soldier, a nobleman, or worse, someone with authority. And people with authority, they get questioned, they get hated, they get turnips thrown at them. Rumors spread faster than the plague. You overhear one. Barley prices are rising because of the red moon. A mule dropped dead. A clear sign of a curse. You nod solemnly, eyes wide as if you've just deciphered scripture. Yes, you say, the moon affects the harvest. An old woman nods back, acknowledging you like a scholar who just spoke divine truth. You have no idea what the moon does, but you've learned. Repeating rumors is the fastest way to avoid getting burned. You also learn what words not to say. Kilometer makes an old man cough like you just hexed his livestock. Tuesday makes a blacksmith pause mid-swing and ask if you're possessed. So now you stick to simple words. Good. No. Is that so? No full sentences, no rounded grammar. A complete phrase might make people think you're clergy or a spy. Once, you slipped up and said, "Definitely." The cobbler stopped, stared at you like you just crawled out of a dragon's stomach. "What?" he asked. You stammered, then corrected. Yes. Good." He nodded. Didn't believe you, but didn't punch you either. That was enough. That day, the bread vendor called you pilgrim without the usual smirk. Progress. You bowed your head, voice low. God's grace. She handed you a loaf hard as stone, but warm. You didn't eat it immediately. You held it like a medal, proof that you fooled a society with no Wi-Fi but plenty of suspicion. At night, you don't sleep indoors anymore. You learned that lesson. Houses mean people. People mean questions. You sleep behind a wall, where the wind hisses like moans from a graveyard. You curl around your bundle, cloth scraps, half a turnip, matches, a knife. The knife is dull but sharp in your imagination. You lay it by your side, not because you know how to use it, but because it helps you sleep. You don't dream of home anymore. You dream of not being looked at for more than 3 seconds, of asking directions without being suspected of spying for the French, of being able to say, "I'm tired," without someone asking if tired is a herb or a demon. You dream of a clean sock. You understand now. Survival isn't enough. Assimilation is the gold medal of the medieval Olympics, and every time you say yes in the right tone, nod at the right angle, avoid eye contact at just the right moment, you're one step closer to that goal. But tonight, you hear a strange sound. Not wind, not rats. Footsteps, getting closer, slower. You grip your knife, not to fight, but to remind yourself that you're still clinging to this world, a world that's terrifying, absurd, and painfully, undeniably real. You hold your breath. The footsteps stop, and someone knocks on the wall. You wake up in an old storage shed, where mold and rotting wood mix together like the signature perfume of the Dark Ages. The blanket over you isn't for warmth. It's a reminder. This is not your home, and you're not allowed to forget that. The fabric is so worn that light seeps through the holes, and it smells like a pigsty rag after a village feast. Your coat, now stiff and soaked with the past, reeks like a battlefield long since abandoned. Mud, ash, and sweat are caked into every crease. You move like a breathing plank of wood, hunching as you step outside. Your skin hits the wind like it's pressing against a dull knife. But you're alive. And in this world, that counts as an achievement. Your compass, the only piece of metal that reminded you of an age with electricity and GPS, was buried 2 nights ago, deep under the roots of a tree. You dug with bare hands, hid it like a crime, because here, anything strange is magic. And magic means witchcraft. And witches don't get second mentions. You've learned to speak less. And when you do speak, you say only what people want to hear. Santiago, you say, 5 times today. To the carpenter, the onion vendor, the water carrier, the guard, and the blind man on the church steps. You don't know where Santiago is. Europe? The Middle East? Under the sea? Doesn't matter. It's far enough that no one asks directions. And more importantly, it sounds holy. You wear a tunic rough as a grain sack, the fabric scratching your skin like a wooden blade. The shoulders are patched with twine. The chest is worn thin. Each step is a test in becoming. You keep your head down. Avoid eye contact. Look at anyone too long, 3 seconds, and they'll ask who you are. 1 second too long, and they'll remember your face. It's better if no one remembers you at all. Once, while waiting in line for bread, the baker tugged your outer sleeve and checked the lining. The seams were too clean, the fabric too soft, like a confession. "This isn't cloth from our village," he said, voice calm but sharp as a paring knife. You broke into sweat, then lied. "A monk sewed it for me, after I helped fix his roof." His face didn't change, just a nod, the kind of nod given by someone who's heard 100 lies, but doesn't find this one worth chasing. You took the loaf, hard as river stone, muttered thanks in a low tone, and walked off slowly like a drifting breeze, heart quivering like a drawn bow. That afternoon, you helped a child who had fallen, knee scraped, blood running. Without thinking, you took the little bottle of liquor hidden in your sleeve, dabbed it on a cloth, and cleaned the wound. The child winced, but didn't cry. You wrapped it in torn fabric and told them to rest. 3 days later, the wound was clean, healed, as if by miracle. You thought you'd done something good, but the village didn't think so. The whispers began. "The pilgrim heals with his hands. His touch makes wounds close. He's not ordinary." You felt a chill run down your spine. They didn't call you a witch, not yet, but they called you interesting. And around here, interesting is dangerous. Interesting is step 1 to kindling and fire. You patched your tunic with rougher cloth. You tried to look even more ordinary than dirt. From then on, when asked, you said only, "The Lord leads me." Short, vague, pious enough to be safe. You saw their suspicious eyes soften. No one argues with God. No one dares. Then you saw her again, the girl in the sandals, still wandering, still barefoot in cold mud. But this time, 2 old women stared longer, and a soldier whispered near the well, "She's not one of us." You nodded, then walked away. You didn't want to know more, didn't want to get involved. 1 odd person is a curiosity. 2 is a reason to light torches. You knew that well. That night, you sleep again in the shed. Same darkness, same mold, same knife tucked by your ribs. Not for defense, but as a reminder, there's still a thin line between you and the abyss. You whisper a prayer. Not because you believe, but because someone might be listening through the cracks in the wall. And if your words sound true enough, sad enough, repentant enough, maybe you'll live through one more night. You wake up to the smell of dung, mold, and smoke, tangled together like some ancient curse someone accidentally splashed across your face. That smell doesn't make you gag anymore, doesn't scare you. It whispers, "Good morning, insignificant creature." You inhale, exhale, and admit it. You've grown used to it. This scent is the only blanket you get each night, the official fragrance of the Middle Ages, bottled for those stubborn enough not to die during the cold season. You rise from the damp pile of straw, damp like a stable mop, your shirt stuck to your skin like the shed shell of a dead shrimp. You walk into the day as if there were no other option, because really, there isn't. You're still breathing, and that, right now, is the only thing tying you to this place. You pass the tannery, where animals are slit open and their hides peeled off like unwanted skin. The acidic stench of stale urine seeps through the air, the smell of blood, of raw leather. But you don't cover your nose. You don't gag. You just squint, like someone passing a bad food stall in a familiar city. Every squish of guts, every trickle of blood, it's all part of the rotting symphony of this world. And somehow, you've become a note in it. Moldy bread? A snack. Muddy river water? A countryside cocktail. You drink without thinking. Eat without asking. Your stomach no longer revolts. It quietly processes whatever comes in, like a sad machine on autopilot. Nausea is now a soft memory, like the internet, or hot showers, or whoever your best friend used to be. Your skin's gone rough. Blisters have calloused over. Your fingertips feel like bark. Your body odor could be its own reality show. But your nose stopped participating weeks ago. You don't know if you're adapting or decomposing. But you keep walking, keep chewing bread like you're gnawing stone. You've learned the rhythm of this place like a song you never had to rehearse. Church bells. The groan of the blacksmith's hammer. The shriek of a chicken tossed into a pot. Every day is a replay. Every night, a test of your mind. Your phone died long ago, not because of the battery, but because of belief. It stopped being a doorway home and became a useless hunk of metal you buried like a tiny corpse. Now, you think about turnips more than notifications. You care more about who's eyeing your bag than who's texting you. You look around and start to get it. This isn't a place to live. This is a place to persist. The child you once helped now hauls 2 buckets of water, each bigger than their head. An old woman coughs like her lungs are leaking in installments. A firewood cellar fell into a dung pit and no one helped. Not because they're cruel. Because if you stop, you fall too. You lie on the straw, shoulders stiff, back swollen, wrapped in a blanket that clings like the damp skin of the underworld. Your cloth bag rests against your chest, not for safety, but because it's the last thing you truly own. Inside it, a rusted knife, a pinch of salt, a scrap of fabric wrapped around a root, and a smooth stone you once picked up. You don't know why you kept it. Maybe it's your new religion. Outside, footsteps echo. Not rushed, not urgent, but you hear them. You always hear them. Here, every sound is a warning. There are no doors, no locks, only instinct. This time, no one stops. No one shouts. No one calls you strange. No strange stares. You're left alone. No one trusts you. No one remembers your name. But no one blocks your way either. And in a world where silence is worth a full meal, being left alone is a prize. A trophy you wear invisibly around your neck each night. You don't belong here. You're still the shadow of another world. But tonight, no one chased you. No one caught you. No one pointed. You survived. And sometimes, that's enough to call it a win. The market is as loud as a demon's stew pot, a boiling mess of stench, burning fat, sweat, and screams, like someone threw a feast for flies. You slip through it, your clothes as filthy as a painting made by a child playing with mud. No one looks at you for long. And that is an art. You avoid the wig seller, the man with eyes sharp as blades and a smile shaped like a trap. He whispers to every passerby, offering items like human hair and teeth from past centuries. You don't stop. You don't glance. You just help unload crates by the salt stall in exchange for a hunk of bread so hard it could double as a weapon. It tastes like dust, but a lord's promise tastes even staler. A child waddles past and drops a turnip. You pick it up, hand it back. The child smiles, toothless, wordless, just a brief warmth like wind on the neck. And in this place, a smile is worth more than a coin, because anyone still smiling is still human. You understand now. Invisibility is your armor. You're the shadow at the edge of the market, the one behind the water buckets, the one crouched rinsing out barrels. No name, no past. And that's what keeps you breathing. But it's tiring, like dragging a cart through swamp. Each step is effort, not just of muscle, but of will. Smile less. Nod enough. Say nothing stupid. Especially, don't ask the price of spices. Sometimes, amid the noise and the stink of spoiled meat, you dream. You dream of soap, of faucets, of clean water, high pressure, warmth. You dream of scraping your tongue, of washcloths, and then you snap back. Church bells in your ear, cow dung in your nose. This world has no dreams, only a reality so clingy it wraps around your toes and climbs to your scalp. You see the children, thin as kindling, carrying sacks twice their size. Their faces blank, as if joy were a lost language from a fallen empire. You hear coughing, long, dry, aching, like a sad song that never ends. They're not alive. They endure. And so do you. You are their quiet copy, just with a different haircut, and a voice not yet claimed by this place. Your compass still lies buried in straw, a little disk of metal and glass that could get you killed if anyone decides it's witchcraft. But you keep it, like a charm, a secret promise to yourself that you came from somewhere else. And every time you feel lost, you whisper, Santiago, a name, a city you've never seen. But now, it's your charm, your reason, your direction without a map. You lower your gaze at every glance. Even a child's eyes can be a spear if you seem too strange. You learn to bow like you've done it all your life, not too low to seem fake, not too high to seem proud. The way a miller greets a tax collector, just enough to survive. A bread seller squints at you. Not quite asking, she says, Pilgrim, right? You nod. Nothing more. She nods back, tosses you a crust. No kindness, no cruelty, just emotion, like you're a roadside stone, and that's just what people do. And you know, in this world, not being questioned is a bigger reward than being fed. You chew the bread, It tastes like straw, lime, and thyme. But you chew carefully, swallow slowly, as if every bite is another vow. I'm not strange. I'm here. I'm one of you. You know, to blend in, you must disappear. You shed your identity like peeling an onion, one layer at a time. Every time you say, God leads me, you throw away a little of your former self. Every time you whisper Amen without knowing what it means, you add another layer of disguise. And for a moment, as you chew, nod, bow to the bread seller, and turn away, you almost believe you've always been here. No one shouts, no one stares, no one doubts. You're not home. Home is still far, like a star where you once spoke freely and slept clean. But right now, as you vanish into the crowd, disappear between the smell of smoked meat and rotting straw, you understand. Blending in is victory. It won't save you forever. It's only a thin shell. But today, it's enough to keep you alive. You curl up in the corner of the monastery, straw stabbing into your back like it's trying to file a complaint in Braille. Every piece a reminder. You were not invited here. Your coat smells like a pigsty after festival day. But you're still breathing, still moving, still conscious. Around here, that's practically an Olympic victory. A gold medal held up by sheer willpower. The compass, the one thing you once thought of as your spine, has now been buried deeper than any secret you carry. A priest glanced at you with eyes sharp enough to shave steel. You knew. If that look had lasted 3 seconds longer, you'd be the next trial. You don't explain anymore. You just repeat Santiago to anyone who asks. A name, a place, a whispered prayer. You say it 5 times a day, like a protective spell, even though maps now feel like dreams in a desert for the thirsty. Your shirt is so rough, if someone asked, you could swear it used to be a potato sack. It doesn't fit. It's not flattering. But no one questions it. You walk hunched, like someone in debt to the whole world, dodging eye contact like traps laid across a road. You've learned. Looking too long here is a declaration of war. The bread woman, a familiar face in the market, smiles when she sees you. Not a warm smile, the kind that says, I knew you'd be back. She hands you a piece of bread, no longer stone hard, now just floor tile tough. To you, that's progress. You thank her. This time, your voice barely shakes, almost like one of them. Almost. You sit beside another pilgrim. Neither of you speak. But something gentle passes between you. Something warmer than words, like heat from a shared fire. A kind of silence that isn't hostile. The silence of 2 people who know that in this place, words are a luxury, and the wrong one is a death sentence. Outside, the chickens are arguing. About millet, maybe, or metaphysics. The church bell rings like the entire village is sighing at once. You glance at the crowd. No one looks at you like a stranger. No one points. You're not embraced. But you're not pushed away either. Almost belonging. And then, as you chew the bread like it's dust and stone and listen to the wind hiss through cracked stone walls, the dream returns. The dream of clean socks, warm water, a shirt that hasn't rotted, a pillow, the smell of soap, the hum of electricity. Things once small in the old world, now massive, aching dreams. You are tolerated, but not belonging. You're a smudge on parchment, unclear in origin, but no one's bothered to scrub you off. A shadow in the church, a whisper in the market, a quiet weed by the well, unnoticed, unpruned. That night, you lie down again, wrapped in a decaying blanket that clings like second skin. The wind whistles through the walls, slipping into every crack, brushing your thoughts like a ghost hand reminding you of what's real. You curl up tighter, not because you're cold, but because you've learned. Survival is a shape, and sometimes that shape is folded. You slip through the muddy alley, dagger at your side, your only friend who never asks questions, only stays close, always ready to speak for you in steel if things go wrong. The mud clings to your boots like each step is a signed contract with the earth. Every squelch is a soft protest from shoes that forgot they were shoes. Ahead, the market boils like a cauldron cursed by demons. Sweat, fat smoke, shouting, animals screaming, iron clanging, and curses flying. It's a festival of rot for the flies, and everyone's invited. But you're just a shadow of someone who used to be. You slip between bodies and beams of light, avoiding every eye as sharp as sickle teeth. You're not seen. And that is the art. You unload a crate of salt, hands shaking but steady. In return, a piece of bread. Not moldy. A miracle. You almost smile. But you don't. Your face is a map, and maps shouldn't wrinkle. A child runs past, drops a turnip. You pick it up, hand it back. In return, a smile. Small, bright, unarmored, like a candle lit in thick fog. For a second, you feel real, human. Invisibility is the armor you wear each day, but it is not light. It drags like a plow through wet soil, pulling both body and soul. You crave a deep breath, a sentence unedited, a name. You still dream about running water, about toothpaste, about soap that smells like oranges and optimism. Then you open your eyes to church bells tugging your neck upright and the local perfume, sweat, mud, and early morning horse manure. You walk among people coughing like their lungs are breaking in rhythm. Children carry sacks twice their size. Their eyes are hollow. They do not complain. They know nothing else. And you understand. Here, survival is the only goal. No one asks what you want. They only ask, are you still alive? The compass stays hidden in a bundle of straw, beneath the coarse cloth that's no longer even yours. Every time panic rises, you whisper, Santiago. It's no longer a place. It's a vow, a prayer, a reminder that you once came from a world with roads, with maps, with futures. Every glance that grazes you, you bow your head. A gesture not taught in books, but you've mastered it.
low enough not to appear meek, fast enough not to betray fear. An old blacksmith passes, pauses, nods once. Smart, avoiding that mess over there. You say nothing, only nod. But inside, his words are a medal. The Middle Ages don't hand out trophies. They hand you another day alive. To be called smart means you're not dead yet. You're doing something right. You're surviving. You trade 2 onions for a hunk of gray sausage. You don't ask what's in it. You don't want to know. You chew. Maggots? Maybe. But you've moved past the fear of maggots. Maggots are seasoning. You only fear hunger now. As the light slips off the thatched roofs and the fires in the market begin to fade, you sit beneath the eave of a nameless house, chewing slowly, watching smoke drift like tired ghosts. And you think, I'm still here. Home is still far. So far it feels like a dream you used to believe in. But right now, you're not burning. You're not hanging. You're not chased out of town. You're alive. You're tolerated. And in this century, sometimes, that's the greatest victory there is. You curl up in the corner of the abbey, straw jabbing your back like it's trying to send a Braille complaint letter to your spine. Every stalk whispers, you weren't invited here. Your blanket smells like a pig pen after festival day and feels like a medieval relic passed down from King Arthur's donkey. It's not warm, it's not comforting, but it's still here. So are you. And in the 14th century, that alone is worth an invisible gold medal, pinned to your chest with willpower and quiet desperation. Your compass, the last relic of your old world, is buried deep, not because you don't need it, but because you need it too much, too precious to lose, too dangerous to show. Here, anything strange is sorcery, and anything sorcerous gets you firewood and the wrong end of a torch. A priest stared at you too long once, and you felt it, that if his gaze lasted 3 more seconds, you'd be standing trial, barefoot, and already condemned. Now, every time your heart races, you whisper, Santiago. Not as a place, but as a spell, a lifeline, a whispered thread keeping your sanity above the mud. Your clothes feels like a sack once meant for potatoes. You walk hunched, not from pain, but because upright posture here screams privilege, and privilege gets interrogated. You avoid eye contact like it's a trap laid across the road. You've learned, staring too long isn't connection. It's provocation. Smiling wrong is firewood. Breathing wrong is blasphemy. The bread seller sees you, doesn't speak, doesn't ask. Just hands you a chunk of bread, not soft, but no longer as hard as an anvil. You nod in thanks. Your voice, now almost local, no longer the dry whisper of a fallen leaf. A small step. But in this place, a step without suspicion is a quiet victory. You sit beside another pilgrim. No words, no questions. Just a shared silence that's warmer than most fires. No need to tell your story. No need to ask for theirs. You're both just grateful to sit and not be alone. Outside, chickens argue like the village council. Church bells toll, echoing like a world always watching. You don't flinch. Bells, mud, smoke, and human stink. All of it is familiar now. You don't belong, but you've become part of the backdrop, a familiar shadow in the frame. And then the dream slips in. Not while you sleep, but as you chew the bland bread. You dream of soap, of clean water, of mint toothpaste, of new socks, of the sound of a washing machine. Things that used to be boring, now hit like heartbreak. You look around, a child hauling grain bigger than his spine, an old woman coughing blood while still sweeping the yard. They're not living, they're enduring, like moss, like dust, and you realize you are too. No one cares what your name is, where you came from, who you used to be. They only care if you can still stand, still breathe, still lift something today. You are tolerated. You are no longer the stranger. But you're not anyone's kin. No one reaches for your hand. No one asks if you're okay. But no one throws you out either. And in this century, that counts as victory. A fragile one, like an eggshell in a storm. You pull the rotting blanket tighter. The musty air fills your lungs, reminding you, this is real. Wind hisses through the cracks in the wood like the world itself is whispering. Don't get comfortable. You close your eyes, not because it's safe, but because sometimes you just need to turn the world off for a while. The bell rings again. The scent of mud seeps into the straw. And you don't dream of home. You just hope tomorrow isn't worse than today. Dear friend, if you've survived this muddy, bone-rattling journey with me, thank you. Truly. Thank you for walking with me. And if you found even the smallest lesson here about survival, about patience, or simply how to chew medieval bread without chipping a tooth, share this video with a friend. Maybe someone in the U.S. who just needs a reason to feel like maybe their life isn't so bad. At least they're not sleeping on damp straw, eating soup as salty as regret. And if you want to keep following this journey, from pigsties to market mud, from pretending to belong to disappearing like a ghost, hit subscribe. Ring the bell. Each new chapter is another night we survive, together. Sleep well. And if you dream tonight, may it be of soft mattresses and hot showers.